New sequence detected. Arc initialization in progress. Stand by for memory alignment.
Episode 7. The House Hears. The house answered Denise's line before anyone else did. Not with words. With pressure. The shudder that had gone through Bloomhouse when Denise said it wrote for me first had not fully stopped. It lived now in the table legs, in the hairline cracks under the drawer wall, in the brass strip darkened by too many hands and too many unfinished decisions. Even the air coming through the 1-inch seam in the center wall had changed. Colder now. Less like a warning, more like the room below had lifted its head and started listening with intent. Naomi stayed crouched by the viewing grill. Zora stayed beside her. Through the narrow opening, the corridor held 3 certainties and 1 threat still hiding its shape. Dre on one knee, soot and somebody else's blood on one side of his face, breathing in short, disciplined pulls like he was trying not to let fear change the rhythm too visibly. Denise farther back with one hand to the wall and blood at the sleeve, exhausted enough that the usual city-fit composure had finally started falling away from her in strips. And the quiet man on the floor between them. Eyes open, throat open too, one arm wrong, one leg folded under him badly. Still not dead in any settled way. Still not alive either. The root had taken hold of the body as position, hinge, held weight. Something architecture could use while it made up its mind. Beyond them, in the thinner dark by the turn, somebody stood back from the corridor light and let shadow do the first layer of pressure. Dre saw Zora at the grill and went pale with relief, too fast to hide it. "Hi," he whispered. "Great. Love tiny windows. Very affirming." No one smiled. The quiet body on the floor twitched. Not the whole body. Just the hand. Fingers drawing once over concrete, like the root beneath the corridor was searching for a better grip. Dre saw that too, and all the relief went out of his face at once. "Still hate this," he muttered. Naomi leaned toward the grill without taking her eyes off the body. "Tell me exactly what happened after we closed the seam." Dre swallowed once, visibly resetting himself into usefulness. The corridor shifted. He wet his lips. Not metaphorically, I mean it physically changed. The wall on the left pulled in by maybe an inch, maybe 2. The floor line under the body started glowing under the dust. Denise told me not to step backward. I chose to respect that sentence. Naomi's jaw tightened. And him. A glance to the body. Dre didn't want to look at it. Did anyway. The quiet one crossed the threshold line before the corridor finished. Whatever it was doing. He went down fast. No one touched him. Dre looked toward the shadowed turn. The calm one didn't even flinch. The calm one. Zora didn't need the man's face yet to know what he was. A kind of procedural cruelty that believed naming structure made it morally neutral. Denise finally spoke through the grill. "You need to close it." Naomi turned her head just enough to meet Denise's eyes through the narrow cut. "No. The house is hearing me. It's hearing all of us." "No." Denise's voice stripped lower. "Not the same way." That mattered. Zora felt it before she understood it. The difference between being present in a room and being legible to it. The chamber had made her legible like a machine. Bloomhouse was making her legible like history. Denise, somehow, had become readable in a third language altogether. Behind them, the old mechanism under the floor gave another long iron groan. Not random. Sequential. Turning toward resolution, Zora looked back at the center wall seam. 1 inch still, cold leaking through, root smell, wet stone, winter flower air. The garden hadn't opened farther, but it had also not closed. It was holding, waiting for the room to stop pretending it didn't know what came next. Naomi heard Zora shift and spoke without looking away from the corridor. Don't split yourself. You are. I have more practice. Fair. The shadow at the corridor turn moved one step closer. Not fully into light, enough for the wall beside it to answer. Old brick took a faint blush of red under the surface, as if the root itself had been forced to admit a body it recognized before the people in the corridor were ready to do the same. Zora stared. Not because she knew who it was. Because the wall's reaction felt almost emotional. Naomi saw that too. Her voice dropped. Don't say his name yet. A beat. You think it's him. I think the house is already trying to choose the fastest wound. The sentence sat between them. Outside, the calm man finally spoke. The voice came in low and perfectly regulated, as if the corridor had been built to carry his kind of patience. You are out of time. Dre closed his eyes briefly. There he is. Was worried civility had died. The man didn't react. We have no interest in damaging Bloomhouse. Naomi laughed once, disgust without humor. That sentence should get you hit on principle. He continued as if he hadn't heard her. Your friend is alive. Your mother is alive. The threshold below is active. Delay serves no one now. Zora listened to the structure of him more than the words. He spoke like someone accustomed to using truth only after cutting it into smaller, more obedient shapes. Dre answered before silence could help the man. I need the record to show that every time he says something technically true, I become less spiritual. The body on the floor bent its elbow. Zora's stomach turned. The motion wasn't faster than a living body, slower. Wrong enough that the wrongness became its own speed. The dead man's palm found purchase on the concrete and held there, trembling with the effort of being used. Naomi stood. Enough. Not to the corridor. To Bloomhouse. She crossed to the side wall beside the door and opened another hidden drawer lower than the first. Inside lay wax plugs, split transit tokens, a rusted key wrapped in black cord, a thin copper strip, and a tiny brass charm shaped like a station arch. She took the wax and the copper. Zora turned from the grill. What are you doing? Making the house here deeper. It already is. It's still preferring surface voices. Naomi handed her one of the wax plugs. Use it. Zora did. The room narrowed another degree. The corridor sounds dulled just enough to leave the house's internal noises more exposed. Tiny shifts in wood, the faint grit slip of settling plaster, the old mechanism below adjusting its own weight like a locked thing growing impatient. Naomi plugged one ear herself and laid the copper strip across the open ledger, pinning Malik's page in place. Zora looked down at the handwriting. If this opened for you, I didn't make it back clean. Don't trust any story that arrives polished. If the wall names Mother, ask what she was built to open. Built. The word was still doing work under her skin. She didn't know how to stop. Naomi put one hand on the brass strip in the table. You and me. Zora hesitated only one breath this time before placing her own fingers down opposite Naomi's. Cold. Then recognition. The brass heated fast, quicker than before, as if the house had spent the last few minutes deciding whether they counted as the same kind of question and had finally decided yes. The ledger lifted one page and dropped it. Every drawer along the far wall shuddered in sequence. Outside, the corridor changed. Dre sucked in a breath. It hates that. Good, Zora thought. Let it. The center wall answered again. Cracks widening through soot and plaster, old root marks surfacing under whitewash. One child's handprint, then another, buried under years of paint and still somehow whole beneath it all. The vertical seam deepened. Not open further yet. Listening. Naomi did not remove her hand from the brass. "House," she said, voice low enough that it sounded less like language and more like a memory being repeated to a room that had once trusted it. "Here witness before line. Here body before copy. Here below before procedure." Zora turned her head sharply. That wasn't city language. That was old. Naomi felt the look and didn't return it. "My mother taught the walls the version that still cared what people meant," she said. "The city taught them function. Guess which one repeats easier?" The copper strip on the ledger hummed faintly against the damp paper. Outside, the false voice came first. Not Dre, not Denise. A woman's voice. Thin with time, dry, familiar in exactly the direction Naomi least wanted. Naomi. Naomi's body locked. The voice again. "Don't let the house choose for you." A mother's grain to it, a history worn into the edges. Too specific to be random, too exact to be mercy. Zora looked at Naomi. "That's not real." "No." But Naomi's face had gone almost colorless beneath the dim room light. Unreality didn't reduce damage here. Bloomhouse had found the right wound and worn it cleanly. The deeper mechanism below answered with another groan, this one longer. The kind of sound a heavy buried gate made when it had started moving, but wasn't yet willing to admit destination. Outside, Denise spoke again, closer than before. "I know what the wall wrote." The room went still around that sentence. Naomi's hand tightened on the brass strip. "How?" No answer. Then Denise again, voice lower than before, no composure left on it. "Because it wrote for me first." The center seam widened another fraction. Cold air crossed Bloomhouse and turned sharper in Zora's nose. Whetstone, root, water. Naomi pulled her hand off the brass this time. Zora followed half a second later. The seam held where it was. "The house wants the mother line," Naomi said. "Or the lock," Zora answered. Naomi looked at her. Same problem. Through the grill, Denise had one shoulder against the wall now, not collapsed, not far from it. Dre was still on one knee, but his head had turned toward the shadowed end of the corridor. "What are you looking at?" Zora asked. Dre didn't answer at once. Then quietly. "The wrong thing is still not moving." The body at the turn. The one the wall had reddened around. The one Naomi had told Zora not to name. The body on the floor, by contrast, was moving more now. Its other hand found the concrete. The head turned in small, terrible increments toward the house. Not toward Alton, not toward Denise, toward Bloomhouse itself. Naomi crouched back by the grill. What did the calm one do? Nothing. Dre's face twisted. That's part of why I hate him. He didn't touch the body. No. He didn't order anyone forward. No. Naomi looked through the grill at the corpse, then beyond it toward the hidden figure, then back to Denise. He knows the house is doing the work for him. Denise answered from the corridor. He thinks it is. That difference mattered too. Naomi stayed crouched by the grill. Then tell me what he's wrong about. Denise closed her eyes once, opened them again. The threshold below does not only read blood, it reads sequence, witness, confession, use. That's why he kept me outside the room. He needs the house to choose me through pressure, not by my own entry. The line landed hard. Zora looked at the ledger. Sequence, witness, Confession. Use. The city had taken something communal and turned it into architecture. But underneath the theft, the original logic still existed. The house didn't only open for the correct blood. It listened for the right pattern of truth and relation. That meant everything and nothing at once. Dre looked between Denise and the dark at the end of the corridor. And if the house doesn't choose you? No one answered. Then the body in the shadow moved. 1 inch. Enough. Warm brown skin, gone wrong at the edges by strain. Familiar line of jaw, familiar shoulders, though the corridor seemed to have trouble finishing them. The route under the wall brightened around him again, as if the old brick couldn't decide whether it was witnessing a return or a refusal. Zora's breath caught. Malik stepped no farther than that. Not whole. Not stable. Enough. Do not open this door, he said. The warmth in his voice broke the room open all over again. Naomi didn't move. Neither did Zora. Through the grill, Dre closed his eyes briefly, like the sound of Malik's actual voice had made his entire body remember being human too quickly. Denise didn't turn toward him. That somehow was worse than if she had. The deeper mechanism under Bloomhouse woke harder. Every drawer rattled once. The center seam split another fraction. The house had heard him. Not as echo, as pressure, as missing line, as one of its own damaged notes returned. The corpse on the floor jerked violently once and went still, as though Malik's presence had disrupted whatever obedience the corridor had been forcing through it. Naomi rose slowly from the grill. "Well," she said, and the dryness in her voice was the thinnest sheath over shock Zora had heard from her yet. "That complicates things." Malik's outline shivered at the shoulders. His eyes stayed clear. "No," he said, "it clarifies them." The corridor held around that. The house listened. The garden breathed cold behind the seam. And every route under 47th seemed to wait for the next wrong move with its mouth already open. Episode 8. Threshold Rule. The house heard Malik like a missing note returning to the chord. The reaction moved through Bloomhouse before anybody spoke. The drawers rattled once. The brass strip in the table flashed faint heat through the wood around it. The 1-inch seam in the center wall drew a colder breath from whatever lay below, and the winter flower scent sharpened until it sat in the back of Zora's throat like something remembered by the body before the mind. Outside the grill, the corridor changed shape around him. Not visibly all at once, but the old brick beside his shoulder took on that faint root blush again, red living under mortar, as though the structure itself did not know whether to welcome him or quarantine him. His outline fought to hold. The right shoulder corrected half a beat late. The left side of his neck blurred and returned. His face stayed clear longest. "Enough. Do not open this door," he said. The warmth in his voice made the sentence worse. It would have been easier if he sounded like a system artifact. Easier if he sounded cold, distant, wrong. He sounded like Malik. Dre stared at him through the corridor dark, relief and fear colliding so fast one barely finished becoming the other. "Well," he said, "that seems bad in a way I respect." No one answered him, because every answer in the room was already occupied. Naomi stayed standing over the grill, baton low, body angled toward the seam in the center wall as much as toward the corridor. She was trying to keep two thresholds in the same field of judgment and hating both equally. "You're real enough to warn," she said to Malik. "That doesn't make you safe enough to trust." Malik's mouth moved by the smallest possible amount. "Feels rude, but accurate." That almost sounded like him joking. Almost. The corpse on the corridor floor jerked once against the concrete. Everybody saw that. Not a twitch this time. A correction, the held body searching for a better arrangement under route pressure. One hand dragged a few inches, fingernails grating over dust and old grit. The open throat glistened black in the corridor light. The eyes stayed fixed, nowhere human. Dre flinched visibly. I would like to file a formal objection to whatever category that now belongs to. Malik didn't look away from the body. It's a hinge. That is not a category, Dre said. It is here. The line did not explain enough. It fit anyway. The calm man in the corridor let that sit. Then his voice came again, maddeningly level. The structure is resolving. If you continue resisting sequence, the station absorbs the failure. Zora hated him more every time he used a word like structure or sequence, like language itself had been sterilized before it reached his mouth. Naomi's jaw tightened. You talk like theft gets more moral if you diagram it. No answer. Of course not. Men like that never defended what they thought time would eventually normalize for them. Denise finally shifted in the corridor, just one step, enough for Zora to hear fabric drag against the wall. Her face through the grill had lost most of the city's practiced restraint by now. Not softness, never softness first. Just fatigue and blood loss and the body's refusal to keep wearing the official version of itself once the room became too old for that to matter. Malik, she said. Not loud, not mothering. His name stripped down to nerve. He looked at her then. And for 1 second, Zora saw what she had been trying not to let herself see all night. That whatever else had happened between them, whatever Denise had hidden, whatever she had signed or delayed or failed to stop, the shape of losing him had never left her body. That did not absolve anything. It made the room harder to survive. Malik answered her without softness and without cruelty. You know the rule. Denise's throat moved once. Yes. The word went through Bloomhouse like a tool inserted into a lock that had already been waiting for it. Naomi turned toward the grill. Then say it. Denise didn't. Outside, the calm man shifted closer to the corridor turn without fully stepping into light. One hand visible now, empty, relaxed. He looked like every official who had ever believed stillness could substitute for conscience. There's no advantage in forcing her to name what all of you already understand, he said. Naomi laughed once. If all of us understood it, you wouldn't still be standing. Good, Zora thought. Good. The station above them made itself known for the first time, not as sound, but as weight. Something far overhead knocked through the root bones of the structure. A run of small impacts, many feet, then a metallic tremor from a platform sign or bench being jostled in haste. The memory wake from Bloomhouse had not stopped moving upward. The old network was carrying disturbance into the station. Reuben. The children. The blanket walls. The undercity line was no longer only below them. Zora heard it, and Denise heard it, and Naomi definitely heard it. Dre heard it too and looked upward automatically, even though the ceiling gave him nothing useful. That's above us, isn't it? No one answered, because the answer would have been a cruelty. Naomi crouched again by the grill. Say the rule, she said to Denise, out loud, in this house, or I'll assume the city taught you to survive by leaving the worst parts implied. That hit. Denise took it without flinching, which meant it had landed deep enough to need containment. When she finally spoke, the words came low and exact. If the main threshold opens while the mother line is unresolved in the outer corridor, the corridor becomes part of the lock. Dre stared at her. I'm sorry, what? Denise kept her eyes on Bloomhouse, on Zora somewhere behind Naomi, maybe on the seam in the center wall, maybe on all of it at once. The house doesn't only read bodies, it reads relation. If it takes me through the wrong door at the wrong stage, it pulls the outer route into the threshold. Walls, bodies, station lines, anything contiguous. Dre let out one small broken laugh that contained no humor at all. So Malik wasn't being poetic. "No," Malik said quietly. "I usually stop doing that when the architecture gets hungry." That line almost broke Zora. Almost. Naomi turned away from the grill so sharply the baton wrapped in her hand creaked. She crossed to the table and braced both palms on the wood as if refusing to hit something required a physical substitute. "The city knows this." Denise answered from the corridor. "Yes?" "The city used this." "Yes." Another pause. Longer. Sharper. "And you." Denise did not answer immediately. Good. Let it cost her. Finally, "I learned it." Not a denial. Naomi's expression hardened into something older than anger and more useful than grief. "My mother died keeping doors from people like him." A slight, contemptuous jerk of her chin toward the calm man's shadow. "And you learned the language anyway." Denise looked at her through the grill with a steadiness that felt almost like surrender and almost like defiance. "I learned it because not learning it would not have kept him out." The him didn't need naming. Naomi's mouth flattened. "That sounds beautiful if you don't ask what your learning cost everybody else." Dre muttered to the corridor floor. "We have got to stop making every sentence tonight unforgivably good." The corpse on the floor pushed up onto one elbow. That ended the breath in the room. The movement was slow, too slow to be life. Deliberate in the way a route-correcting pressure might be deliberate if it found itself working through a body instead of around one. The open throat flexed once against no surviving human need. Dust stuck to one wet cheek. One shoe scraped concrete as the leg beneath it tried to rediscover alignment. Dre recoiled until his shoulder hit the wall. "Nope, no, no, absolutely not. We are not making eye contact with death while discussing policy." Malik moved 1 inch closer to the corridor light. The root answered him by reddening more strongly in the wall beside him. Whatever he was now, the underground no longer treated him as absence. It treated him as pressure. "He crossed before the threshold settled," Malik said. "The house cut him. The line kept the body." Zora's skin went cold. Kept. Not revived, not possessed, not punished in a moral sense. Kept. Because the root had found a use for weight and vertical shape and unresolved pressure. Naomi heard something in that phrasing and turned back toward the grill. "Then, if the corridor closes into the lock, the station becomes outer skin," Malik said. Dre shut his eyes. "Cool. Hate the image, hate the phrase, hate all of you for knowing what that means." The calm man resumed with more edge now. "Not much. Enough. You are wasting the only useful mother line in the corridor." Zora felt the sentence hit Denise like a hand forced to remain invisible in public. Denise straightened as much as blood loss and the wall would allow. "You don't say my name like that anymore." The calm man let the line go unanswered. Of course he did. He wasn't there for her as a person. He was there for what the room made of her. Naomi bent toward the grill again. "Dre." He opened his eyes. "What?" "When I tell you to move, you move fast." His face changed. He already knew what was coming. "Oh no." Naomi stood and crossed to the far drawer wall. Rows of old wood. Symbols scratched, punched, burned. Transit circles, root marks, prayer notches. She moved her fingers over them quickly, not reading like text, reading like pressure memory. One drawer, another, then one lower down marked by a split token pressed into the front. She stopped there. Zora knew before Naomi turned that the room wanted a side answer before it got a main one. Naomi looked at her. "I need your hand." "Again." "Of course." Zora crossed the room slowly. The lantern in her hand warmed with old human use. The seam in the center wall breathed cold at her back. The station above murmured through the bones of the structure in distant, frightened movement. She placed her palm on the split token. The drawer released at once. Not with light, with recognition. Naomi pulled it open. A narrow chute sloped down through the wall and away from the room. Not large enough for dignity, barely large enough for a body. There were scratches inside it, initials, root marks, panic cuts. Not random. The passage had history. Not pretty history. Dre looked at it and went pale in a new direction. Absolutely not. Naomi didn't look up. Absolutely yes. "I'm not getting fed to the haunted mail slot." "It's not haunted." Zora looked at her. Naomi corrected without blinking. "It is only occupied by memory and bad design." "That is not better." Malik spoke before the argument could waste the room. "He can cross the sideline." Dre pointed at himself. "Who is he in this sentence? I need less myth and more nouns." "You," Naomi said. Terrible answer. Naomi straightened and finally looked at him fully. "Your witness line, not mother line. The house can take you sideways without reading the corridor as threshold if you move before the lock deepens." Dre blinked fast. "Why do you say things like I should be grateful?" "Because I don't have time to make them kind." He looked at the chute again, then at the corpse slowly levering itself more upright, then at Denise still outside the door, then at Zora. The joking part of his face tried to return and failed. "What if I get stuck?" Naomi answered immediately, then panic smaller. Dre stared at her. "You are one of the worst people I have ever met." "No." Naomi's voice didn't move. "I'm one of the few keeping you alive right now." That shut him up. The station above thudded again, faint but clearer now, many feet. A child crying out once, cut off quickly. Reuben moving the line. The truth Bloom House had bled into the walls was reaching people who did not yet know how much it would cost to understand it. Zora looked toward the ceiling, even though there was nothing to see through stone. Denise heard it too. Her face changed, not around guilt this time, around math. Triage. The old impossible arithmetic of choosing which disaster got priority. "If the station is waking," she said, "the city will already be indexing response." The calm man did not contradict her. That was answer enough. Dre swore softly. "Can we survive one secret at a time?" "No," Malik said. At least he was honest. The corpse on the floor pushed fully up onto one knee. The right arm hung wrong, the head tilted too far. The eyes stayed open and useless. But the body was rising because the corridor needed verticality and the route was finding it where it could. Naomi did not look at it again. She had already understood the geometry better than anyone else in the room. "Dre, now." He went. Not gracefully, never that. One arm into the chute, then his head. Ugh! Immediate resistance from the old wall correcting the angle of his shoulders. "Oh, I hate this," he said in the plaster. "I hate all legacy systems." Naomi put one hand between his shoulder blades and pushed in short, exact increments. Exhale. "I am." Smaller. That is not a measurable instruction. The wall took him another inch anyway. His jacket snagged. Naomi stripped it off him without ceremony and shoved it at Zora. Outside, Denise shifted one step left without warning. The corpse's head followed where she had been, not where she was now. Malik had seen it first. "Again," he said. Denise moved left once more. The body lagged. Not intelligent, anchored wrong. Dre, halfway into the chute, found enough breath to say, "I would genuinely marry competence under the right civic structure." No one rewarded him, but the line bought the room one more human second. Naomi shoved harder. Dre vanished to the ribs, then the hips, then only one hand remained visible, fingers scraping the lip of the chute before the wall took that too. A second panel, somewhere deeper in Bloomhouse, thudded open. Then a crash. Then Dre's muffled voice, pained and offended both. Still alive, emotionally less so. Naomi didn't even turn. Bar it. Offended you had to ask. Good. One inside. The threshold still unresolved. The mother line still outside. The seam still breathing. And the station above still waking. Zora looked through the grill at Denise, at the blood on her sleeve, at the wall under her hand, at the way Bloomhouse had listened harder every time Denise spoke like somebody who belonged to its deeper vocabulary. She heard herself ask before she knew she was going to. "Did you ever cross it?" Denise didn't pretend not to understand. Not the corridor, not the station, not Bloomhouse itself. The deeper thing, the mother line. The threshold below. Her eyes stayed on Zora. No. Naomi turned. The calm man in the corridor turned too, though he still did not fully step into life. That answer had mattered to both of them. Denise went on, because now that she had started on a clean line of truth, the room would not let her stop with something that small. "I was taught enough to name it, enough to stabilize partial activations, enough to keep them from widening when they threatened the wrong districts." Her mouth tightened. "I was never supposed to be the one who crossed." The sentence landed like a loaded key. Naomi's voice came out lower than before, more dangerous for it. "But you could." Denise looked at the seam in the center wall. That answer was not verbal. Bloomhouse heard it anyway. The seam widened another fraction. Cold air crossed the room, stronger now. Wet stone, old roots, water moving somewhere deep enough that it reached them only as weight against silence. The winter flower scent sharpened until it felt less like a smell than a memory some buried part of the city refused to let go of. The garden had moved closer. The corpse rose fully to its feet. Zora saw the moment Dre would later describe wrong if he had to speak it fast. The body standing not by will, not by resurrection, but because the corridor needed a vertical hinge and had found one. One arm wrong, one leg dragging slightly, head tilted, throat dark, eyes nowhere human. The calm man finally stepped one foot into the corridor light. Not Voss, not trying to be Voss. One of the men who had learned calm from men like Voss and mistaken imitation for adulthood. His face said less than his stillness did. "You know what happens next," he said to Denise. Zora felt Naomi's entire body harden beside the grill. Denise didn't look at him. "No," she said. "I know what you want to call what happens next." Interesting, Zora thought distantly. That was twice now someone had denied procedure its favorite name. The hinge body took one step toward the threshold. Then stopped, held by some old invisible line. Malik looked at Zora through the corridor dark. "Do not let the wrong door decide your mother." The warmth in the warning nearly undid her. Nearly. There was no room left for nearly. The center seam in Bloomhouse widened one last fraction. Not enough for a body. Enough for a hand. Enough for a room below to say it was done waiting. And for the first time since Bloomhouse had awakened, Naomi sounded like someone who hated the next answer more than all the previous ones combined. The house hears her. The corpse at the door tilted its head. The calm man took one more step into light. And behind the one-inch seam, the garden breathed in.
Sequence archived. To continue the record, activate subscription.